welcome to the stage from Epiq Global, Chris Affleck and Dan Wilson, and from Cribl, Sid Shaw.
Hey everybody, welcome to our talk about how Cribl helps our company save over $400,000 a year. My name is Dan Wilson. I'm a security engineer at Epiq. I started my career in the Army. I did security for the Army for about 5 years. I've been working with Epiq for the past 3 years. And on the side, I raise goats.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Affleck, senior cybersecurity engineer with Epiq. I've got 15 plus years of IT and security experience, and I'm also the newest member of our cybersecurity engineering team at Epiq, and I'm excited to share our Cribl journey with you guys.
And that leaves me. So my name's Sid Shaw. I'm one of the solutions engineers here at Cribl. I had the distinct pleasure for working with the Epiq Global team on their journey to Microsoft Sentinel almost about 2 years ago.
Yeah, just about.
All right, so besides being absolutely epic, could you tell the audience maybe what Epiq Global does, right?
So Epiq as a whole is a legal services company. Some of the big things we do is digital forensics, and we set up a lot of websites for class action lawsuits. We had a whole lot of customer data that flows in and out, so security is very top of mind for just about everybody.
So we started this journey about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and obviously we had a problem to solve. You guys were looking at migrating to Microsoft Sentinel. What started that, right? What sparked that journey?
So our digital transformation started out because we were looking at moving from on-prem to the cloud. We have already started moving into Azure. We went a long way into the cloud. Hit those. And we were trying to close down some of our data centers that we had worldwide. One of the things that we were trying to do is our SIEM at the time, Exabeam, was on-prem. So we wanted to see if we could get rid of those cyber stacks and move it all into the cloud, which led us to Microsoft Sentinel. Sentinel is already in the cloud. We already had an E5 license as part of our Microsoft-centric systems. And so it seemed like a really good fit to go ahead and move into that space with Sentinel. That way we could then close down those racks and help close some of our data centers. It really helped us out, and it was also part of our, about every 2 years we would go in and relook at all of our systems in security and try to see what fits best. Exabeam just wasn't doing it for us anymore, so we wanted to see what else was out there, and like I said before, Sentinel was just a great fit for us with as much Microsoft as we use.
So you talk about a digital transformation. And speaking to so many customers, and Epiq included, one of the challenges we hear a lot is about testing different SIEMs and kind of getting an apples to apples comparison between those products, right? What works better for one company may not work better for another. Could you elaborate maybe a little bit on how Cribl enabled you to test multiple solutions?
Yeah, Cribl was actually helpful because we were able to look at the data that we were able to send to them and how easily the data would flow from our log sources to our SIEM. And going through Cribl, we could capture that, see what we have to do to send it on, and see just how it fits better within our systems and within the SIEM itself. One of the problems we ran into, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, is just the cost. And that's where Cribl steps in.
Awesome. So maybe we should talk about why you guys ended up with Cribl.
Yeah, so we were looking for a tool that would be an intermediary between our log sources and Sentinel. Moving to Sentinel, we quickly realized that the log ingestion costs would add up very quickly. So we needed a tool to help manage that, and that's where Cribl came in. Cribl allows us to shape the data the way we need and really help manage those costs. Another thing we needed was the ability to send unaltered logs to cheaper blob storage, which is what we use. We use archive tier for Blob, so we can maintain those archives data, and that helps us comply with our retention policy as well.
So you talk a lot about the technical bits, and I'm sure we have a lot of engineers in the room. But the other thing I think everyone loves is having a good balance, right, and having systems that are reliable. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the less technical bits? Like, what are some of the operational efficiencies you were able to gain by implementing Cribl Stream in the middle of your data flow?
It just simplifies the workflow. Everything can just go directly into Cribl and then out to whatever routes we need it to go to.
It's fantastic, right? A unified place just to manage everything.
So our data transformation journey. It started out like I said, we had a little bit of an issue at the beginning with the cost. Cribl was just perfect for that. I mean, look, if you look at the different types of sources that we had REST API, we had the S3 buckets, raw HTTP coming in from Edge. We even had databases on-prem that we needed to pull logs from, and syslogs. So many syslog. But using Cribl, we were able to push those where we needed them, and we were able to not really modify them, but scope them in the ways that would fit into our SIEM and fit into the solutions that our operations team needed. One of the biggest things we like to talk about is getting rid of the noise. That was one of our #1 priorities, was to cut the cost and get the noise down. Which Cribl does a wonderful job. We get our operations team in there, they look at the data, they can see what's needed and what's not, and we can cut it before it ever even enters Azure.
So one of the points you made is you mentioned that there's a lot of protocols that this data is coming over, and using Cribl as that unified platform, call it a data translation layer to make solutions that may not be compatible with Microsoft Sentinel suddenly compatible. Could you elaborate a little bit on how having a unified place to manage all of that was crucial to your process?
Having a unified spot for doing all of that work let us take a look at the data as it was flowing in, get with our operations team, look at it, see what noise was there, cut out the noise, and look and send the data not only to both of our SIEMs at the beginning, because we still had, we were still running on the old SIEM while we were setting up the new SIEM, and also all the unaltered data would go to the blob storage just in case we made a mistake and needed to pull some of that data back out. Cribl helped us to push the different routes, push the different pipelines, and actually see what data we needed and where it needed to go.
Fantastic to hear. So let's talk a little bit about what this all resulted in, right? And what it meant back to the business.
Yeah, so we were Cribl's first Sentinel customer, and we knew we were going to run into a lot of unknowns. And Cribl really just worked with us hand in hand, figuring out those unknowns. We eventually got to the point where Cribl was ready to test out the Sentinel destination and pack. And we collaborated with them on that to do some of the testing on that, and that was then released into the repository for everyone. The one huge feature that they released was the addition of Cribl metrics. That was huge for us because we could then take that data, generate reports for management, and show that Cribl not only pays for itself, but goes above and beyond.
I think that's crucial to call out, right? So, a lot of companies will take on projects, and I think it's critical to be able to go back and look, after the fact. It's like, hey, what did this result in, right? We went through this massive effort. Obviously, implementing Cribl wasn't, as much as we like to say, the click of a button. Requires a little bit of work. Obviously, migrating a SIM is no small feat. Being able to go back and look and say, hey, this was the value we provided, right? And that could be dollars, which are great using Cribl metrics. It could also mean that you weren't woken up at 3 o'clock, because I'm sure everybody loves being on call. So it's awesome to hear. Let's talk a little bit about kind of where you guys have ended up. Obviously, 2 years ago, we started very early in the process. I remember I talked to one of my counterparts and I said, hey, I'm working with Epiq Global. They're looking at a migration to Microsoft Sentinel. And I think the words that were spoken were run, or turn around and run. But I think it was a good journey, right? We definitely figured it out. There was a lot to discover. But maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how that transformation happened and how you guys were successful.
Yeah, so when we first started out, the only way to get the logs into Sentinel was either through the OMS agent or the log analytics workspace. Well, the OMS agent you had to use in order to get logs to like the syslog table, the common security log table. And so we had to create a server on our on-prem, load up the OMS agent, and then so that added more on-prem for us. But it did get the logs into Sentinel, which is what we wanted. Once we got the logs into Sentinel and could start working on them, then we could see other ways to get the logs in. We could still create custom logs which bypass those on-prem service, but at the beginning, we really didn't have a whole lot to work with because it hadn't been done before. So the OMS agent was the best way to get those logs we needed. And syslog and common security log, those are some of the very important logs in the Sentinel landscape. So once we worked with Cribl, worked with Sid and a couple of the other guys, and they created the pack for straight to Sentinel and then the destination, we were able to go in, change around the destination, send everything directly into Sentinel, and then we were able to remove all of those servers with the OMS agents on them, freeing up space for us.
We heard this morning from Clint, Letty, and Interton how important it is for us here at Cribl to get feedback from our customers. And I think that's a great example of that and that partnership of hearing how we can improve Cribl every single day and putting that back in the product.
And now we have the slides everybody has been waiting for. This is showing the amount of logs that we actually have flowing into Cribl. That red line there, that shows, for 6 months we were getting a ton of logs into Cribl, but we were able to pare them down to just a fraction to actually send into Sentinel. And this is where that savings comes from, because if we would have pushed all those logs, well, let me show you. This is the savings. So here we see every month the amount of money we were able to save. If you look at that large yellow line, that's what would have been going into Cribl. If we would have pushed everything in, that's how much money we would have been spending each month. But using Cribl, we were able to chop it just about in half for all months. And we ended up saving anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 every month just by using Cribl to push, to trim the logs, to curate them, as my boss likes to say, and then push them into Sentinel, bypassing all that cost.
That's a fantastic story, and I'm sure a lot of the folks in the room are wondering how they could do the same thing, right? So maybe we share some of the best practices and maybe some of the lessons learned, right? This was definitely a learning journey for all of us.
Yeah, so first off, you have to get it working. So we had to kind of run 2 SIMs at the time until we were comfortable shutting down the other one. One of the things I would definitely recommend is going through Cribl University. When I first started, that's the first thing I did, and it got me up and running very quickly. It'll teach you the capabilities of Cribl. It'll show you the best practices, which one of the things I discovered was that our syslog was not set up properly. We were dumping basically all of our syslog sources into the default syslog port, and we were running into issues where we were dropping logs, and it was just generally not working the way it should. So it's recommended that you actually split each vendor into its own port, which that fixed it very quickly. The other thing I would recommend doing is using the packs. Cribl has a bunch of preset packs for different vendors. That's just going to save you a ton of time. When you put in a pack, you're going to bypass having to do all those regexes and parsing manually. That's already been done. So definitely check those out. And finally, Cribl has a lot of local user groups. Me and one of the other guys on the team, he actually lives in Atlanta with like 30 minutes from me. So we go to all the Cribl events in Atlanta, and it's a lot of fun. There's different events, and they do Top Golf and all kinds of stuff. It's fun. Definitely check it out, and you'll meet other Cribl users, and we learned some stuff from some guys who've been doing it for a while. So you definitely get some useful information there.
So what I'm hearing is not just take advantage of the free training, right? But lean on everyone else. You have other folks who are doing very similar things at different companies. Locally, you can find other resources out on Cribl community. Actually, it actually blew my mind a little bit. I came from a pretty large company prior to this, and I jumped on Cribl community and seeing that if I posted a question, it wasn't just other folks who were engineers and practitioners jumping in, but you'll find product managers, Clint and Letty and D, our executives, also jump in there. They're fairly technical as well. So you never know who's going to reach out, but it's a great place to kind of reach out to the larger Cribl community and get some help. All right, so way back when, right? So we started with the OMS agent 2.5 years ago, and one of the things we've improved along the way was just getting data into Microsoft Sentinel. So how do you replicate this in your own environment? So looking at your data, right, we've talked about Cribl Stream a ton. So what does that afford you in the packs? So the idea is if you're able to send your data into Cribl Stream, you can pass it through the Microsoft Sentinel pack that's available in the Cribl pack dispensary. The idea behind that pack is it's kind of a translator. So it takes the data in whatever format the vendors have defined. It'll take that data, put it back into the formats that are compatible with Sentinel, right? So you can get the built-in analytics and the value Sentinel provides. You can also not touch the data and send it off to blob storage, right? So you have, essentially an insurance policy. So I get asked a lot, hey, I'm going to optimize my data flow. I know what I need today. How do I know I'm not going to miss what I need tomorrow? And that's where object storage is fantastic. It's very cost efficient, but it affords you that flexibility to say, hey, yesterday I didn't think I would need this. Well, it's in object storage. I can go back, I can pull it out of object storage and put it into my analytics platform. So from Cribl Stream, if you are going to send the data to Sentinel, from the OMS agent, we've kind of graduated to something a little bit more modern with the data collection endpoints that exist. So the idea is you can put that against the REST API. Take that data, once it hits the REST API, it'll go through what Microsoft calls a data collection rule. You can do some transformation there, a little bit of cleanup, but you don't have the flexibility you get in Cribl Stream with cleaning up timestamps or routing to multiple destinations. And then finally, the data lands in Log Analytics Workspace.
And these are some of the resources that we used along the way. I mean, everything from the pack dispensary that everybody knows to trying to learn how to do regex again. They're really good to get into, especially like we were talking about earlier. Cribl University is a wonderful tool, the sandboxes. They really helped us get in there and look at them. Packs are always changing. I try to go in there at least once a month because there's always something new popping up.
And yeah, thank you. I think we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have questions for myself, technical bits on implementation, anything for the Epiq team. If you're wondering why there's a picture of goats on the screen, that's also a thing. Yeah, so any and all questions. The only thing we ask is if you could step up to the mic so everyone in the room can hear you. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, howdy. First volunteer.
Yeah, of course. So great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all. So I have a question. So you both are in security, right? So when it comes to data, you understand that the more data you want as a security analysis, you might have a part that is for triggering the actual alert, and the rest for threat hunting and etc. So security analysis usually wants to have the data and more context around. So based on that and the log reduction that you've done, what would you say that you actually removed? Was it noise? Did you compromise on something to actually be able to reduce that volume?
So what we would do first is we would look at what we would see as noise. We would look at just logs, like take your firewall logs. Do you need to see every block of incoming data? That's not getting into your environment, so we went ahead and would cut that. And then we would talk to the security ops team, have them look at the data flow, say, is this good? Is this something, a block that you want? And they would tell us yes or no. And then eventually we were actually able to bring them into the Cribl side and ask them the same thing. It's like, okay, you're doing the hunting, you're doing the monitoring, here's the data that's flowing in. What's the first thing, if you're doing a hunt, what's the first thing you're cutting? What's the first thing you're gonna say, okay, I don't want this type of data when I'm hunting. So, okay, that type of data, that's what we wanna remove. That way there's less noise, that's one less step you have to do every time you do a hunt.
Yeah, I would say, it's important to work with the people that are doing the analytics and the hunts, because they'll tell you if they think it's useless. The other thing we do is we will go into we'll remove certain fields from logs, even if it's a valuable log for analytic purposes. There's still going to be some junk in there that has no value or is duplicated. I mean, we run into issues all the time where a log will have the same host name in three different fields, and that over millions of logs. It adds up. So that's kind of our scalpel approach. We first go with a hatchet with the SecOps team, and then we go in with the scalpel.
And just in case, everything goes to the log storage untouched. So if we do screw it up, we can pull that data back in and relook at it afterwards.
Your 400 per year saving takes that in consideration, right? The cost of the actual blob.
Yep.
So as a company who is kind of going through a similar transformation as you guys are, when you started to do your test data and kind of pull some sample data in and run it through the packs, obviously you're seeing a certain amount, or just go with say 40% of reduction in there. From those packs after 6-8 months, were you guys seeing very similar reductions, or were you actually seeing more or less than what your sample data was pulling? Meaning, like, obviously you can't just dump it out there and say start collecting. You're giving it a very small piece of either firewall logs or something like that. But when you ran it through those packs, you were getting some sort of metric back that said this is what we can reduce it to. Was that true 6-8 months after you had actually got Cribl implemented?
It was similar. I'm not going to say it was the same, because it just depends on what was going on that day with what logs you got. But we would pull it, and then like you say, a month later we're going to pull it again and see how many we're getting. And if we were dropping 40 to begin with, it may drop to 30 or we'll go up to 50. But we usually, because we would pull it several times, we would bring down 4 or 5 different log batches and look at them just so we can try and get that, because you're never going to get everything, and you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty similar. As long as you pull a big enough group, you can't pull 100 logs and call it good. You got to pull 1,000, 2,000 logs at least. So as long as you get a good enough sample data set, you should be still spot on.
So did you do a lot of customizing of those packs as time went on?
Not of the packs. So that's one thing that I actually made a mistake about, was I had adjusted one of the packs, and then we started using that pack for another pipeline and realized the adjustments I had made just screwed that pipeline up.
Yeah.
So we would put the pack in, and then we'd make the adjustments in the pipeline.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would chain the pack in first and then make adjustments afterwards.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. Anybody else? Oh, one more.
Hey, thanks again for talking today, and it's kind of a follow-up to some of these. You talked about the importance of working with the analytics group and getting their input. Did you set up anything formal in terms of workflows there, or did you just kind of do it as a question arose from the engineering side?
We kind of have a weekly meeting where we go through and we'll pull, generally we pull the biggest log sources, and then we look through those and see, if there's anything that's not of value to them, and then we'll go from there. At this point, we're kind of at a stop as far as cutting goes. So now we're just kind of optimizing at where we can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for coming.
And a big shout out to the Epiq Global team.
What's that?
I'll say big shout out to you guys. Thank you again for speaking.
Yeah.